Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, Sarah Palin blazed her way through the state last week, and guess what? On Monday, former Senator Rick Santorum announces his formal bid for the presidency of the United States. And then what's going on in that legislature of ours? We have two of our regular analysts on the scene to tell us all that following these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, I tell you, it's presidential politics full-time. I can't even remember how many candidates are seeking the Republican nomination. I got 12. There's probably 4 or 5 more who could run. Sarah Palin, I want to say blazed her way through the state. I'm not sure that's entirely accurate, but we know where she went. She went to Gettysburg, Dillsburg, Philadelphia, and then onwards up the Northeast. And guess what? Monday, I should say, Senator Rick Santorum announces his bid for the presidency of the United States. Sitting across from me is David Taylor. He's the executive director of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association and a long-time observer of Republican politics. All right, how do we look? Is Sarah Palin a serious candidate, or is this all about branding? It's all about consulting fees. It's all about speech fees. I mean, is this the biggest con game, or do you think no one I've talked to says she's really running? Give us your insight.
It remains to be seen. I mean, if she does choose to run, that she will be formidable because she's a media supernova, and she attracts tremendous feeling, whether you love her or hate her. Right. She will not be ignored, and for whatever reason, the media just can't take their eyes off of her. They can't stop talking about her. And
then going and having this pizza dinner with Donald Trump, and you can imagine that conversation. I mean, both of them. I don't think either of them are serious candidates, in the sense that they're going to run. Yeah. But they're milking this in this crazy circus-like atmosphere that we now get in presidential, or in some aspects of presidential politics.
Right. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And if the Republican field were more settled, I don't think you'd see this sort of phenomenon taking place. But the fact is, while Mitt Romney is the de facto front runner, the Republicans have a long tradition of going with the guy who finished second last time.
The Rotary Club, like they look around like the Rotary Club.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. The Republicans are very square in that way. And Romney, to his credit, that he is out there doing the work. That he, in the 2010 election, that he was on the campaign trail doing events, raising money. He was, here in Harrisburg for Tom Corbett. I saw him other places in the Commonwealth in 2009, working on issues contrary to the Obama administration. So Mitt Romney has been out there doing the work, trying to earn the nomination. But he has what is seen by many as being a fatal flaw in that the health care plan that he supported in Massachusetts is basically too similar to the president's health care plan to allow him to have the standing to properly challenge that.
Can he somehow find his way
I don't know
around
how, because I mean, unless he would go and say, "Hey, what I did in Massachusetts was brilliant, and here's why," or here's how it was a mistake. Otherwise, he's going to spend the entire campaign trying to just explain the difference between vanilla and French vanilla, and that's just not good.
Is that why? I mean. First of all, I agree. Romney is the front runner, certainly not prohibitive. You're absolutely right about that. And he raised $10.25 million out in Vegas a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
So he's clearly going to have a lot of money. But look what happened 4 years ago. He got beaten by Huckabee in Iowa.
Yes.
He got beaten in New Hampshire, a neighboring state. So he didn't win either by McCain. He didn't win what he needed to win, and didn't survive. But he is trying to make the economy, staying away from health care. He's talking about budgets and taxes and debts and deficits.
Right.
Is that going to be his focus?
Well, I mean, that would be his strength as a businessman.
Yep.
But there's also a problem with Romney. I don't know what you'd call it, a sincerity problem, an authenticity problem. The fact is that he comes across you know, like a campaign droid. And you watch those YouTube videos of him from '94 running against Ted Kennedy, saying positions that are 180 degrees from where he is now, and he seems every bit as compelling and sincere as he does now.
Not as sincere?
That is his problem.
Okay. Well, look, let's talk about a guy I know that you know pretty well. Former Pennsylvania two-term Senator Rick Santorum. He's been out in the hustings.
Yeah.
He's had a couple of interesting showings in some of the straw polls, which he's won. He's did pretty well in the South Carolina debate. Very little money. He's not doing badly there, but, you know, it takes millions. 3% in the polls. This big field that you described. He makes his announcement on Monday in Somerset County. Take it from there.
And as a disclaimer, you know, Rick is my old boss and my great friend, so I'm very biased in his favor.
That's why we have you here, because you give us the inside skinny on this.
And you know, Rick, you know, he grew up outside of Pittsburgh in Butler. His dad came to America as a very small boy outside of Johnstown. His granddad, Rick's granddad, worked in the mines out there in Somerset and Cambria County. So
it's Rick's grandfather who worked in the mines.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
go ahead.
and that Rick's dad grew up in that area out by Somerset. You know, Rick is certainly a long shot. Nobody has gone from losing a U.S. Senate race to winning the presidency since Abraham Lincoln. But Rick is an unconventional candidate, and these are unsettled times. Yeah. And it's possible that you know, an unconventional candidate could have a chance. And Rick is doing the work. I mean, he's been out in Iowa.
Right.
And in fact, he was active on the campaign out in Iowa that the state Supreme Court foisted gay marriage on the populace out there, and there was a recall election where those justices were defeated, and that Rick was out there part of that campaign.
So your point is that no one will outwork him.
Well, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And with those relationships on the ground, to have, and got to remember that Iowa is a caucus. It's not a primary. And so there'll be those small committee meetings of activists who will talk it through, and having passionate people who are committed to a candidate could make a difference. You know, there are three folks who make it out of Iowa: win, place, and show. Yep. And if Rick is one of those three, he goes on to the next round.
All right, great update. We'll have you back as this, you understand this Republican primary as well as anybody. All right, Republican nomination process, I should say. All right, coming up, two of the state's leading reporters. We're going to talk about sexting bills and Grover Norquist. He's not a Pennsylvanian. What's he had to do with the state budget? Stay with us. You'll find out.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by ReconnectPA.org, supporting a comprehensive transportation funding solution, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Joining me, as often is the case, are two of the state's leading reporters, Robert Swift with Times-Shamrock Newspapers and Scott Detrow with Pennsylvania Public Radio. Soon to be going off and doing other things. At some point you'll come on and tell us what you're doing, Scott. All right, look, we've done a lot of budgets. I want to come back to that, but I want to talk, Scott, start with you. Texting or sexting, I guess is the way to put it. That's where you send, if I understand, is lewd photographs over your cell phone or telephone.
You can ask Anthony Weiner about the details.
You can ask, Congressman Weiner about that. And it can lead to serious legal problems. And here's the question. In the debate in the legislature, first of all, what is it that they're considering? And then, as they're considering different proposals, isn't one potential problem that some stupid, dumb thing that a kid does can ruin a life if we're not careful? Talk about that.
This is one of the many instances where technology is a bit ahead of the law. Many instances of teenagers, you know, every cell phone has a camera in it, texting pictures of themselves in, you know, various indiscreet forms, I guess is the way to put it.
Discreet and indiscreet.
Discreet and indiscreet, but there really isn't set law. So there's been a few cases where people have been charged with felonies because when it comes down to it, fits the definition of, you know, child pornography when people are underage. Wow. So the House passed a bill that would make this a misdemeanor. Republican authors of this bill said they didn't want, you know, a serious crime for teenagers who do something stupid, but they also want to point out that this is against the law and not something they should be doing. there was a handful of lawmakers, especially Democrats, saying that even a misdemeanor goes too far, that it's a stupid mistake, and you don't want something on a kid's criminal record.
Is anyone talking about felony for this? I mean, that seems a little strong. I know you get into, Scott points out, an 18-year-old sends let's say a nude photograph of himself or herself to a 16-year-old. You see where you go ahead.
No, there's Senator Greenleaf in the Senate has a bill also. I think it's tied into with something else on sexting. I think there's also some provisions in there for expunging records. So if you are a minor, and then later in life should be a chance to.
So if you're young and dumb, and you do something stupid, what they're saying is they want to stop the practice. Yeah. But they don't want to get into a situation where they ruin someone's career and lives. I mean, a felony but there's no talk of felony, or is there? Likelihood?
No, I don't think there's felony. There's some language in there about is it this is being done maliciously, or is it being done just or innocently?
Another angle.
Right. Yeah. The biggest opposition that I heard was complaints that the penalty in the House bill was too harsh. I didn't hear many voices saying that it needed to be stronger. The thing that sticks out to me is if the goal is to try to send a message to teens,
right.
It seems to me that if you have a naked picture of yourself floating around and being forwarded to your friends and your social circles, it seems like the message has already been sent to me.
Yeah.
That's just a horrible, embarrassing situation for any teenager. But this is happening in a lot of other states as well, and it's simply an attempt to get the statutes up to speed with the technology and what's going on.
All right, we're going to run to a break, and then I'm going to start with Robert, and we come back. A guy named Grover Norquist, he's heads an organization, Americans for Tax Reform. Do I got that exactly right? And people sign this pledge, no tax hike pledge. Is Grover Norquist, who's not a Pennsylvanian, not in our state? He's not a Pennsylvanian, isn't he, in any way? Wasn't born here. We have all these people who start out here and go somewhere else. Dictating, controlling the budget of the state of Pennsylvania. The reporters are smiling. Grover Norquist and you. I'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Joining me is journalists Robert Swift and Scott Detrow. We're chatting about a number of things dealing with state government, state politics. All right, Robert. Grover Norquist heads this. Go ahead.
He has this, advocate group in Washington against taxes, and he gets people to sign a pledge saying that they won't oppose any tax hikes. This came to attention of Pennsylvania last summer when Governor Corbett, as a campaign thing, signed on.
One.
But so have 34 other state lawmakers.
34 lawmakers in our state.
In our state have signed this.
253, do I got that right?
And there's a similar pledge for congressmen, too, to do.
Right. They sign a pledge, no tax hike.
It first reared its head last week when Senator Scarnati had put together a lot of time and effort to put out a proposal.
He's the president pro tem of the Senate, the Senate leader, right?
Right.
Okay.
For an impact fee on Marcellus shale drillers to help local communities and some other environmental programs. The bill's been out there a week. Norquist sends a letter to him and other senators saying this violates the pledge if it's passed, and also giving his opinions on a lot of other stuff about Pennsylvania's finances and other stuff related to the Marcellus shale drilling issue in this letter. So he's weighing in.
So in other words, you got this guy who heads this outside organization, and fiscal conservative, and he wants no taxes. We're not judging that. But what about the exigencies in our own state? What about the needs, and what about the surplus? Is anyone supposed to pay any attention to anything else?
I mean, it's clearly a big factor, and the fact that Joe Scarnati basically tailored his bill around Governor Corbett's promise not to raise taxes to make this feasible. They're jumping through all sorts of hoops, routing the money through the Public Utilities Commission instead of into the general fund so that Governor Corbett can sign this and say that he kept this pledge. And Corbett has been very blunt about this. He was going through the many reasons he opposes a full-out severance tax on natural gas drilling, and there's a lot of philosophical reasons as well. But the last time he talked about this, he did mention, he said something along the lines of, let's be blunt, I also signed a pledge not to raise taxes, and that's one reason I'd oppose this.
So go ahead. These pledges mean something.
And this is tough
to some people.
For the Republican Party, and this is tough because there's a lot of pressure on the senators in southeast Pennsylvania, and not just there, in other parts of the state, to do something about the Marcellus Shale drilling and to get some revenue from it in some form. And they're under pressure from their constituents. So here you have, this outside
so they're being
guy
pushed. Go ahead. They're
potentially blocking this thing, and it's a very big problem for I think an all-Republican state house right now is what we have.
Yeah, go ahead.
And Corbett gave himself zero wiggle room on this pledge issue during the campaign. He said he was not going to raise taxes. There was a little blip last summer where he said he'd be open to raising fees, and after a few days of stories about that, he doubled down and said, I won't raise taxes, I won't raise fees, and you can hold it against me at the polls when I run for re-election if I ever do that.
And his friend Tom Ridge at one point, former Governor Tom Ridge, tried to help him out, if I recall. Do I got that right? And say, well, maybe a fee is not exactly a tax, and the Marcellus Shale tax in many polls, one of which I did, but others show that a Marcellus Shale tax is popular,
very popular,
with both Republican and Democrats, right?
In the plaintiff letter to Norquist, Scarnati points out that the Marcellus Shale companies support his proposal. Most of them do, are on record, and he writes back to Norquist saying, hey, take a second look at this. There's also an out in this pledge that if you have a direct lowering of some other taxes, you can sort of have a
So in other words, you can lower some, raise some, as long as they're maybe revenue neutral. Is that the way you think about it? Well, who cares? I mean, I would think this was about Pennsylvania issues. I'm going to get Grover Norquist to send your humble host here a little note.
It's worth taking a read of the letter that Scarnati sent Norquist, because it's a little bit snarky at times. It's pretty funny. He says, excuse me, sir, we've never met. We've never talked. However, I have been pushing against taxes for years, and I have a strong record as an anti-tax advocate in Pennsylvania. So let me tell you why my bill is not a tax. Thanks.
Yes, thanks. Oh, my.
That's a paraphrase, but that's the message.
All right, we have a grand jury recommendation, a series of recommendations out dealing with changes they want to the gaming law. I think that's the best way to put it. Our panel of journalists will weigh in on that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Hi, welcome back with journalists Robert Swift and Scott Detrow. All right, let's talk about this grand jury recommendation. I mean, having to do with changing the gaming law, Robert. I mean, what?
A state grand jury spent 2 years looking into the awarding of the slots licenses back in 2006.
Right.
And they came up with a 102-page report, a series of recommendations. The big one is taking the investigative unit out of the gaming board, making it an independent agency. There were what was striking about the thing, there were no criminal charges of wrongdoing against anyone involved in the licensing process, either a recipient or one of the regulators in this report.
But wasn't there something about scrubbing information and all of that? Go ahead.
Basically, this report gave a lot of detailed examples of the broad charges that critics of the gaming process have been making for years, that there's heavy political influence both from lawmakers trying to get their friends jobs and from board members and lawmakers trying to clear the board for people to get gaming licenses. And a lot of instances in the report of the investigators finding something unsavory when they're doing background investigations and leaving that out of the final report, or kind of doing a handshake. Well, we'll just politely ask this person to withdraw his or her name from the license so that we don't have to embarrass them by airing these reports. A lot of examples of kind of indirect and direct pressure.
Mm-hmm. But no recommendation about one of the issues that's come up from time to time is that there are 7 members in the gaming board. 4 of them are legislative appointees, 3 gubernatorial appointees, total of 7. To award a license, for a gaming operation, it takes 5 of the 7.
Supermajority.
Supermajority. But if one of the legislative appointees vetoes a person, that trumps what the other 6 could do.
It's a blackball that any caucus leader has, and they can do this in private. In 2006, there was pressure to get, they were behind schedule in awarding the licenses, getting the revenue flowing so there could be property tax relief. So it gives one, caucus leader power to just stop everything in its tracks. And it was used on one occasion when early on they were trying to decide what to do about slot manufacturer licenses. And they got a delay because of one member. So the grand jury in the report does not make that recommendation. It's missing. This says nothing about it.
This highlights the conflict that we have in the system, where we have a board that's charged with regulating and policing the gaming industry, but also maximizing the tax dollars that it generates, and those two don't really go hand in hand.
So that's one of the thoughts is that you take the regulation of it outside of the operation, and you put the regulation perhaps in the Attorney General's side. Is that a possibility?
That's a possibility.
Yeah, there's also been talk about giving it to the state police. The report actually goes further than House Republicans have been big proponents of this, and the report goes further than the bills they've introduced and says make it a completely independent agency.
I mean, separate. Why would you, if you have the Attorney General's office, why would we need to create another agency?
I mean, that's a good point. I think that the goal, whichever way you do it, is these jurors said you need to take it out from under the control of the political appointees who in the past have possibly pressured them.
For the last month, every time I've had guests on the program, we've come back to one fundamental question at the end of the day, and I'll start with you, Robert, and then we'll go to Scott. Is the legislature going to get this budget done by June 30?
I think they will get the budget done by June 30th. Could be by June 17th, June 23rd area. Doesn't mean they will be done with business. They
only have to get the budget done. I think the rest of it, the voters. Scott, what you said.
I'm going to be contrarian, because I've been thinking that there is so much pressure to get the budget done on time after 8 years, and everyone running on the platform of we'll get it done on time. If you're a person at the table and there's something you desperately want and you care about that more than having a late budget, you could be that one holdout, because everyone is going to be trying to scramble to get this done before July. So I'm going to be contrarian and say maybe not.
Good point. All right, great update as always. All right, thanks for watching this edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and you stay well.